Up next, the story of one of the greatest new wave singles ever released from the lead singer and songwriter. Inspired by nuclear war, it reached number 7 on the Billboard's mainstream rock chart in 1983, and it was re-released. It reached number 76 on the Hot 100 chart in 1990. We celebrate this one-hit artist on our latest edition of Bottle Lightning, next on Professor of Rock. Hey music junkies, Professor of Rock, always here to celebrate the greatest artists and the greatest songs of all time. Make sure to hit the subscribe button below to be a part of a community that is dedicated to the timeless music of the rock and roll era. And make sure to look us up on Patreon to be a part of curating this golden age of rock. Got a new program there as well. Now the 80s were a fabulous decade for music, we all know that. Full of songs that just changed the way that we look at the world. Modern English released a rocket in 1982 called I Melt With You, one of the best songs of the decade, and it would become their only hit in America, but one that still mesmerizes all of us, our very souls to this very day. Lead singer Robbie Grey tells the story of crafting this classic next. As we go into this interview, I do want to thank our sponsor, Zenni Eyewear. Go get yourself a new pair of glasses or sunglasses at Zenni.com. When you get your eyewear from Zenni Optical, you can say goodbye to foggy lenses and glare with Zenni's advanced 2-in-1 anti-fog and anti-reflective coating, which is paramount in today's environment. Check it out today. Here is Robbie with a story of I Melt With You.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
I mean, none of the band were musicians. None of us. So I think Gary could play a few chords, and before the punk thing, before the Pistols and the Clash, we'd have been watching and listening to David Bowie, Roxy Music, Iggy Pop, Lou Reed, that kind of thing. But we never would do anything like that because we couldn't. But when punk rock came along, we knew, it just blew the doors off everything in England. And all the bands that had been happening before that were gone. And it was just a whole new thing. And we were young and we were part of that. We were just a straightforward 3-chord punk rock band, and we kind of learned our instruments and got more into being more creative. That's when we changed the name of the band. I mean, then punk rock had kind of got boring then, really, and was dying on its feet. And then bands like Joy Division and Wire and Gang of Four and The Cure, everybody like that, and there's thousands of them, were making all this interesting music, which was called post-punk, which is now really big again.
Right.
It's funny.
Well, and I Melt With You, I mean, that's one of the biggest new wave songs ever. A classic song, much bigger than its chart position. It crossed over here. I mean, this was back in the time that if a new wave song or an indie song crossed over is huge, to go to number 78 on the pop charts, but number 7 on the mainstream rock charts, which of course turned into the modern rock charts later. But my first foray into music was what my parents would listen to, right? Like Neil Diamond or Billy Joel or stuff like that. But when I discovered new wave and post-punk, that was my music.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. So when I discovered the Smiths and Modern English and Depeche Mode and Joy Division and all those bands, it just had a different meaning to me. So when I would hear it, I was obsessed with finding out what every little detail meant, diving into the lyrics and diving into the know-how. And this, of course, was before the internet. I always read that you had written this song about if there was a nuclear war and this 2 people making love while this is going on around them. Tell me about that.
Basically, lyrically, it's about when the bomb drops and a couple of making love. It's the last thing they can do. And it's Cold War was happening then, remember? So, it's quite a relevant thing. But you're right. I mean, at that time, lyrics were quite left field and insular with the post-punk sound that you're talking about. And that's why I think a lot of people got into it, because it wasn't just la 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 la. La 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 la.
I love that.
Well, Mesh and Lace means good and bad, black and white. So I Melt With You, I wanted to chuck something in like that.
I saw the world crashing all around your face.
There's a lot of kids that were loners, and I think they got into that music, and we were loners ourselves. So we were writing about that kind of thing. So I think that brought a lot of people to listen to bands like Modern English.
We felt like outcasts, and that spoke to us.
That's a good thing, isn't it?
It is. Yeah. Totally different than the popular kids and what music they were listening to. But what's interesting at that time is there were a lot of bands that were speaking about the Cold War and nuclear war and that fear. You guys, of course, with I Melt With You, but then Mid-Year with Ultravox and Dancing with Tears in My Eyes. And then there's The Fix with Stand or Fall and Red Skies.
Music tends to stem from mainly the working classes. It tends to stem from, periods of adversity. So in the darkest moments, what pulls you through? What did people do in World War II in London when the Blitz was going on? They sat in the underground stations together singing songs. You'd sing songs to drown out the noise that was going on, the mayhem that was going on, and keep your spirits up, keep your spirits lifted. So the fact that, yes, this nuclear threat, which hasn't gone away, it was there, and it was so prevalent at the time. It was so scary at the time. I think looking at it and trying to find palatable ways of standing on your soapbox, because that's what it is. Every musician has a little soapbox. Just when it got to Live Aid, we put all the soapboxes together, made a big stage. So the idea of the song, quite simple. There's a movie that I saw when I was a kid called On the Beach.
We're all doomed, The whole silly, drunken, pathetic lot of us.
And then I eventually read the book by Neville Shute. And it's all about a nuclear submarine after a nuclear holocaust, nuclear war. And the submarine was submerged when the war happened, this nuclear thing. It's all over and done with in minutes. And the only place where there are humans left alive is Australia. So this submarine goes to Australia. And all the people in Australia know what's happening. They know what's coming. The fallout's coming towards them. And they're given a choice of how to die, how to finish their final years. So, the racing car driver sits in his garage and gets in his racing car and starts it up. In his mind, he's driving again. That's his way of going. The old couple take a pill and cuddle up. And it just struck this idea, what would you do if you had 4 minutes left to live? Someone said, right, now, that's it. You've got 4 minutes, that's it, countdown now. What would you do? You can't run, you can't hide. You'd be with the people you love. You'd play your favourite piece of music, and you'd dance with tears in your eyes.
Yeah, I was just like, at least let's try and sing about it, talk about it. There was a public forum, and I know in England the mood was quite right-wing politically. The media seemed to make any social conscience seem like so out of date, and God, you just losers, and it's sort of putting this wave of cynicism out to the world.
Yeah.
Now cynicism has become our worst enemy.
I know.
Because nobody thinks anything can change. You can't change anything, just accept it. And that's kind of what I believe they would like us to feel. But now I realize the cycle just keeps going round and round. Same kind of backdrop to those feelings in Stand or Fall. A little bit more dystopian, a little bit more after the event of the nightmare. Imagining, when they used to show us, you were saying in the 50s and 60s, they would show the little air raid shelters, and you felt there was a kind of security, there was somewhere safe. Then when it was nuclear war, it was just these films where everything in the first 20 miles will just be flat.
Yeah.
And then everything in the next 1,000 miles won't be worth living on for 500 years. And I was like, oh, well, that's good. That was in my head, and the idea of the old cliche, red skies at night, shepherd's delight. And I was like, not in my lifetime. And then I'm like, okay, this is great. You guys are going to fight out your big war on our turf, and we didn't even vote for either of you guys.
Wow.
Well, it was what was happening at the time. Your country and Russia, it looked like it was going to happen. It was going to go off. So, a lot of people are writing about stuff like that. But with I Melt With You, I wrote the lyrics in about 10 minutes. I remember being in London in Shepherd's Bush. We were living in London. And I sat on the floor of my little apartment and just scrawled the lyrics down. It was really fast. And then the producer helped with the chorus. I did the main chunk of the verses, moving forwards and all that stuff. And he, being a kind of, producer, wanted a chorus because we never knew what a chorus was. Mesh and Lace hasn't got a chorus on it.
I know.
So he came along and said, look, you can do this here. And it kind of goes up. That's the chorus. I'll stop the word. So the producer had a lot to do with that. But literally the main bulk of the lyrics were written in 10 minutes.
That's incredible. And England at that time was a bleak place. I mean,
that's why all the bands came out of it. That's the only reason all that music came out. It's exactly that reason. And that's creativity for
Margaret Thatcher and the whole thing that was going on there.
It's black and white. There was no colour in our country. Everyone was like walking around with chins on the floor, I mean, it's not like that now. It's a colourful country now. So it's different.
In your bedroom, I read that you also wrote it after a smoke.
I did. I didn't want to say that, thinking they might get in trouble, but that's what I did. I had a joint and I sat down and just wrote it. It just came out.
Wow.
That never happened again, actually.
Well, tell me about recording it and arranging it, because, of course, working with Hugh Jones, he gave you some pointers, because after the first album, you guys were approaching things with a little bit different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we had a producer, so he had his ideas. We hadn't really had a producer on the first album. It was just us. And the guy from Floppy and Gristle, Ken Thomas, was working on that. So it was never going to be a commercial album, was it? But with After the Snow, it's Hugh Jones. He could songcraft. He could help you with things like choruses, middle eights, bridges, which we didn't really understand. So he had a lot to do with I Melt With You, the way it glides. I mean, there's like 24 tracks of acoustics everywhere. He really knew what he was doing with that. And with the vocals, for instance, on Melt With You, it was the first vocal I did on After the Snow. And I was used to shouting, I'm a punk rocker. I was like, ah, ah. And he said, don't do that. Just speak into the microphone. I was like, holy, what am I going to do here? I've never done this before. And that's why that vocal's got a really weird texture to it. Because I literally don't know what I'm doing. I'm just going, moving forward, using all my breath, and it sounds like that. And I think it made it work.
It's a bit of a croon.
Yeah.
I love it.
That was Hugh Jones' idea, and then I had to go and do it.
Well, and up there with some of the best opening lines ever. I love that. Moving forward, using all my breath, making love to you is never second best. We used to love that line, listening to it in our little group of outcasts, as we talked about. And
I wish I could bottle that and find out.
I know. The second verse, it's almost like you're a prophet, because you're describing the world that we live in right now.
I think maybe because it came out so quickly, that's what it felt like. It felt like poetry more than, sitting down and looking at a song. It was more like just, writing it down like poetry, really.
Dream of better lives, the kind which never hates. Of course, the background, you should see why. But trapped in a state of imaginary grace. I mean,
it's pretty good, isn't it?
It is. And then I made a pilgrimage to save this human race, never comprehending the race is long gone by. I love that.
I mean, 2,500 people tonight are going to be singing that.
Oh, I know.
They'll literally be singing it. I won't have to sing any of them. It's funny how some songs just hit people, isn't it? I've got a feeling that it's not just the words, it's the way the music glides along. It reminds me a little bit of West Coast, that if you took the vocals off, and you've got this kind of almost birdsy sort of feel. You
do.
But we didn't know who the Birds were, but, people told us later. We didn't know anything about West Coast music then.
Well, the breakdown at the end, too, the humming part.
Yeah.
What do you remember about recording that part?
I remember saying I don't want to do that. I'm a punk rocker. I'm not going to hum. No, he just said, have you tried? What about a whistle? I said, man, a whistle? Do you think I'm Glenn Campbell? We did the hum thing, and it did really work. It really worked.
It worked with the bass, too, because that was so cool. I
mean, Hugh Jones, he was a bit of a genius. We tried to get him to do the Take Me to the Trees album, which Martin Young did, in 2016. Martin Young from Colourbox and Mars. But he just didn't want to do it. I think he felt he was too old at that point.
Well, I just love the story about how it became part of our culture, because somebody bought an import, I understand
it. It wasn't even being, we were recording some tracks in the studio with Hugh Jones, and the phone rang. And it was Artie Fufkin, you know, from Polymore Records.
Hi guys, Artie Fufkin, Polymer Records. Nice to see you. And where is David?
Saying, you guys, they're playing the record on import. Literally, one guy had played on a major station on import.
Yeah.
Wildfire. All of a sudden, all the major stations. And it wasn't released. It wasn't released. It was all on import. So all of a sudden, we had, you know, everybody phoning us up, wanting to sign us. From America.
You used to play to a couple hundred people
we used to
in college towns or whatever, and art schools. And you're playing to thousands of people at Daytona Beach.
First gig we came to America, or to the South America where it's hot. We had our long coats on. We got off the plane and it was like 90 degrees and we had our big coats on. We didn't know. Didn't know what anything about America. Really.
Did it blow your mind to be able to be playing to that many people?
It really did. I mean, they said to us, okay, you could play outside to 10,000. We were like, outside? What do you mean outside? We've only ever played inside 4 walls. Or you could play inside to 5,000. We were like, well, 5,000 sounds okay. We'll play inside. And the walls were sweating. It was unbelievable. Wow. And the crowd was singing all the words. And we didn't know what was going on. It was amazing.
That's incredible. Well, of course, it's become one of the 500 most played songs in radio history here in America.
Yeah.
And you guys got honored by BMI.
Last November, we went to a big award ceremony, BMI Awards, in London, and it had more plays than changes by David Bowie. Jeez. We were like, hold on a minute. This is pretty good.
What do you remember about the music video? Because this was about the time when people were starting to tune in instead of just listening through the radio and through their Walkmans. They're actually seeing it in full color on their television sets.
I think what I remember about the videos is it was either stick your hair up, put loads of makeup on, or have wind blowing, or stand on the edge of a cliff, or, you know, it was all like that. But back in England, we had no money at that point. So Melt With You was made for $1,000, that video.
Wow.
I mean, we were carrying the props in, and I cut my arm here, and in the video, if anyone wants to see, I've got a cut on my arm. And I got some strange characters enjoying modern English music after that. I mean, really, yeah, people into cuts. Things like that would appear. But that cost $1,000 to make that video.
Well, of course, used in Valley Girl.
Yeah.
That definitely helped put it on the map as well. And a lot of people have covered it since then. I mean, Jason Mraz covering it for 50 First Dates.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Nouvelle Vague, a good one.
It's getting better all the time.
Yeah, I mean, it's everywhere. We're constantly getting requests to use it in adverts and films. There was a film a couple of years ago called I Melt With You, and the guy...
Rob Lowe and...
Yes, Jeremy Pivens.
Yep.
They were all in it.
Thomas Jane.
And it was based on a French film called The Grand Bouffe, a great film where everyone eats themselves to death. And in this film, everyone takes drugs and drinks themselves to death.
And you're trying to recapture something like that.
I mean, I like the film, but I don't think anyone watched it.
Well, like you said, it's been used in so many commercials. I remember when Burger King used it.
That was an enormous amount of money, that was.
And M&M's, Ritz crackers.
Hershey bars.
Hershey's, Taco Bell.
Everything. And it's still happening now like that as well.
Well, the re-recording in 90, I remember the arguments that we'd have as friends saying, which version is better? We like the original
Well, we didn't
better.
know what to do. It was TVT Records, Steve Gottlieb. We're going to give you loads of money. We want you to re-record I Melt With You. We thought, well, why not? Because it wasn't really a hit in terms of chart position. Then we thought, well, how are we going to do it? And we couldn't think, all right, let's just do the same thing. So we just re-recorded it.
Yeah.
Basically.
And I recharted and did 2 spots better.
It's weird.
You know?
Very strange. But I like the original more. It's got more of an analog sound. It's not so, digital was just starting then.
Right.
So it was more digitalized, but the original is still analog. And also the single's in mono. So I like that.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Well, Robbie, it's been an honor to talk to you. Thank you for the music. I mean, this meant so much, as I was saying, growing up and finding that music as an outcast, and somebody else understood what we were going through.
Yeah.
And I love that.
Yeah, well, thanks for the interesting questions as well.
Absolutely. Hey, thank you very much. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.
I'll stop the world and melt with you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Leave us a comment about this Bottle Lightning 80s classic. What do you remember about this song? Share your memories with us. We want to hear them. Also, share your memories of how maybe this song inspired you, or a story about it. What are some other Bottle Lightning songs that you think we ought to cover on this show? Tell us in the comments and we'll get to it. Now, to get our merch, including POR shirts, click on our merch links. If you enjoy our content, become a subscriber. Hit the bell so you never miss out on our daily content. Also, make sure to click on our Patreon link for more content and to become a real supporter of this cause. Help us keep the music alive. Very important. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends. Stay safe out there.